So I'm Vince Boudreau. I'm the interim president here at City College, and I want to welcome you to today's reception. And we really have one purpose for this reception. It's to give you the opportunity to meet David Levy, who is the investor and benefactor in this program, and to give him an opportunity to meet you. And I want to say just a few things about this program and about Mr. Levy's support for it. If you ask yourself, why do philanthropists contribute to a program like the program that's benefiting you? There's a whole range of reasons. Very, very often they are specifically interested in advancing some goal. And Mr. Levy has been, in our conversations and in his original gift, absolutely committed to the idea that at City College we have truly exceptional students. And with an investment in, in support and some visioning, the good that you are can be translated into, careers of remarkable success. He comes from a family where, father, grandfather were educated at City College. And when they came to City College, they left as graduates of a place that really marked them for the rest of their lives as exceptional people, utterly prepared for the world. And so the investment in this program is first and foremost an effort to recreate right now, as we do in many ways across campus, recreate right now that sense of esprit de corps and an intellectual identity of a group of you, so that when you leave here, everybody knows what it means to be an S.J. Levy Fellow. And it means that you are among the best students we have at City College. You've been prepared in ways that are consistent and sustained and extraordinary. The other reason why philanthropists contribute to a place like this and a program like yours is as an opportunity to pay tribute to someone they love and to make an investment in the name of someone who has made a mark on their lives. And this often gets lost in the language of a scholarship or a program or the logic of what we're doing. And it was really important, I think, to both of us that not get lost, that in a real important sense, you learn the story behind the name of your program. When you talk to Mr. Levy, as I've had the opportunity to do, one of the things that comes out as clear as anything I've ever heard from anyone before is that this program is, from start to finish, a labor of love and a tribute to a family and a father who, in really profound ways, influenced his life and set an example that others followed. And so, on the one hand, while this program is specifically designed to prepare you to do extraordinary things, it's also designed to roll out a program of activity that is a fitting tribute to someone who was an exemplar of what it meant to be a socially aware, ethical business person. David Levy is the founder of Levy Forecasters. This is an economic firm in Westchester County. Those of you that studied with Kevin Foster in the economics department may not know this, but Kevin Foster, as a student like you, was an intern in Mr. Levy's organization. He works, and one of the extraordinary things about his organization, you go into it, and it is populated by one or two interns, one or two fairly young people, and there's a kind of a cycle. I've never been to an office of somebody who's made, someone in the business world, where you walk into the rooms and it looks more like an academic library. So the thing that you're doing, the thing that he's supporting here, your education, is something that's not just been important in his past or the past of his family. It really runs through the whole way that he runs his business and engages with the people that come through those offices. So please welcome the man who generously contributed to this scholarship, Mr. David Levy.
And one of the things that happens in my role in basically following through my father's wishes is that I go a lot of places where people thank me for my generosity, when in fact what I'm doing is I'm just supervising my father's generosity. That said, it's incredibly fulfilling, and to me, I just keep thinking, and of course I have a brother and sister. We discuss this together. Would he have been happy with this? And I think he would have been enormously proud with what you've all accomplished, what's being produced now, and only the second year of the program, and we're still evolving and changing, trying to improve. I look very much looking forward to meeting all of you. I also warn you that you may talk to me for 5 minutes. I might turn around, you come to the other side, and I won't recognize you, or I'll forget names. There's a gene for this in my family, I think, that runs it. So please don't take affront if I do that, because I really am interested in what you all say. As I said, you're just the second year of this program, so you're really trailblazers. And I mean that, I think, in the sense that not only are you helping us learn how to hopefully do this better and better as time goes on, but you're creating a reputation, not only for yourselves and hopefully helping you launch very successful careers that really take you where you want to go, but also, I think, making more and more employers start to learn, hey, there's this group of people from the City College, and before we go flying someone in from Boston or someplace, or look for a, certain level of competitiveness in private schools, we should take a good look at some of the talent right here, because not only are we going to find, source of people just as talented, but in many cases bringing unusual stories of perseverance and sacrifice to get to this point. So, anyway, my intention here is to really give you a little background. Who was S.J. Levy? Why did we decide to develop the program the way we did? And what I and my other family members are hoping we'll see from this. Can you all hear me okay? All right. The first thing, I thought it'd be nasty and ask anybody if anyone knows what the S stands for. But to save time, it doesn't stand for anything. I think it was a sort of rough way of paying respects to some other, a Simon and a Samuel and someone else, but it didn't stand for anything. He would be very upset if somebody printed his name and put a period after the S. He said, it's not an initial, that's my first name. So a little bit eccentric fellow. He was born in 1922 in New York City, and he died in 2012, ripe old age of 90, and just a few months after his wife of 63 years, my mother Barbara. His career as an economist was quite unusual, and in fact, in order to give you some background, I really have to go back one more generation. As President Boudreau mentioned, we have my grandfather's also a City College graduate, class of 1901. He saw, when he was a boy in the city, he saw clipper ships pulling up. He told me they'd unload bananas. If anything had already turned yellow, they were no good. They'd be rotten by the time they got to wherever they're going. Put them on the docks, kids could grab them, and that was that. Very different time. Not only what changed my lifetime, but how long this has spanned. Anyway, he got a degree in physics, and he found there was not much of a market for physicists at that time. So he ended up running, there was a family wholesale business. They didn't really have anybody to run it, so he took that over. And I'll skip the long story, but in 1908, some events happened that made him focus on the problem of unemployment. Really, we were in the middle of what was then called a panic, but we would call a recession today, probably. And he thought this was an ethical affront, that people who are able to work and can contribute and have families to feed can't find the opportunity. So their efforts are wasted. It's just, he thought it was an ethical disaster aside from any other way you want to look at it. So he decided to try to figure out how to solve the problem. Now you get the idea of this little eccentricity. Not a lot of people say they're going to figure it out. And he started from a point of view that was a little different from the way macroeconomists usually start today. And those of you who've had some economics know that in microeconomics, when we look at one firm or industry, we're looking at the at what they're doing to try to maximize their profits, and profits are terribly important. When we talk about the entire economy, profits are somehow taken out of the subject. And in fact, what we're also taking out is a whole financial way of understanding the economy, which says a lot about where we are today and why there's so much confusion. So he said, I'm a businessman. I hire people, and I pay maybe $100 in wages and buying merchandise and paying rent, because I expect I'll get 110 back. And sometimes I'll get 110 back. Sometimes it might be 105. Sometimes it might be 115. What is changing the environment so that not only my business but many other businesses see the profits go up and down periodically? And so this will save you a lot of economics. Anyway, he developed a way of understanding the economy, which is something we call today the profits perspective. And he spent much of his life thereafter writing letters to people who probably thought he was some kind of a nut, although he got some interesting correspondence with some famous people over the years. And but he also began to realize he had a tool for forecasting. In 1917, when our entry into World War II, when we entered World War I, he realized that all the government spending on the military was going to stimulate the economy, and he was able to take advantage of that information. There was another episode, and ultimately in 1929, early in the year, he was so alarmed about the state of things that he sold all his stocks and he began liquidating his business, so that in October, when the great crash came, he was safe and out and retired comfortably at age 46, I think it was at that point. Anyway, he had two sons. My father was one. My father's younger brother, Leon Levy, who went to Wall Street and was one of the two people who really built up Oppenheimer and Company, later Oppenheimer and Funds, and then was one of the first big hedge funds. So had a very successful career there. And he was also very heavily influenced by my grandfather. The three of them would go for walks during the 30s. They lived on the west side, and they'd go look down where there was a shanty town, which they were called Hoovervilles in honor of the president who had presided over the great crash years. And he would lecture them about why this was ethically wrong, why it shouldn't happen, what government should do. So my father came out of this, as did his brother, with a great sense of, doing what's right, doing what's good for people is very important. So when it came time to, I'm looking at last year's notes, and I'm skipping a couple of things because I'm getting a little bit long-winded already. Anyway, my father's career ended up beginning after he actually came out of advertising and radio, which in those days were the same thing. You put on the programming, and you played ads for people. So they were the advertising agency and writing copy, etc. But he was interested enough in the economics, so he went to work with his father initially, writing a publication, began in 1949, then called Industry Forecast. Many years and permutations later, it's called the Levy Forecast, something we provide just to our clients. But the idea was to develop a track record in Wall Street and the press and so forth. And he did have some success doing that. He also, became a consultant to some pretty big companies, some CEOs of important firms. He was also very interested in public policy, partly because he was interested in what was being done in economics, and also was interested in the politics of other issues. And he, spoke with over the years with used to meet with many of the Federal Reserve governors, many congressional committee chairmen. Back in those days, Congress had committees that would work together and actually work out plans, and so we would have programs that, instead of waiting to the last minute, fighting and calling each other names and then saying, okay, we'll do the same thing we did last time for another 6 months. Hopefully we'll some point get back to better governance, but despite all this, really being serving business and making his living that way, he was always very concerned about the ethics and the importance of the profits perspective as a way to kind of help people see some things that were not showing up. So it wasn't all the answers, but this is an important tool. And I got involved working with him after I had done, ironically, in advertising, a couple of jobs in market research. And then I came to work with him. And I had this sense that, gee, we are so close, if we only convince a few more people, something will happen. Well, the project is a longer term one than we thought. There are some people interested, so I feel over time that will do well. But it always came down to a human level for him. He would talk about a household. He talked about in the 1970s, when we're having television programs that everybody's watching that show what are supposed to be average families living in houses, or at least sets that look like houses, with a standard of living that where the majority of people could not afford. And was this creating expectations? Was it, So he was very intellectual, thinking about all these things. And he was an active citizen. He got very interested in the issue of preventing censorship during the McCarthy era. This was when there was, and if someone called you a communist, if you were accused, it could ruin your reputation. Faculty members in particular, some who might have been communists and wanted to, and needed to be able to give their point of view, and others who maybe they're all worried about losing their jobs. So he served on the Academic Freedom Committee of the American Civil Liberties Union for many years, including well after the end of Joe McCarthy. Now, he also had a very strong belief in education. It ties in with opportunity, and I'd say, he was a good guy. I mean, everybody's a little biased. Some people can't stand one parent or another, but I didn't have that. I really thought I had a terrific father and mother, and he was a good son. He was a good husband. He was really a very positive person. He had his faults, but they were mostly innocuous. Things didn't bother him sometimes when they should have, and something should have been done. He was absent-minded. I'm finding more of that in myself as I get older, but he definitely was more absent-minded than I was. And, he would be careless about things like his appearance, and my mother would have to chase him out the door. He had the wrong jacket with the wrong pants, or his shoes weren't tied, or something wasn't tucked in. But, he was a happy, positive, very optimistic person. And so this is the father that we wanted to honor. Now, I should explain that he and my mother decided that they wanted to take a portion of their estate. Once the second one of them was gone, they would take a certain portion of the estate and divide it, and each would have it each go to support their alma mater. Now, we did this through a family foundation that my father and uncle had started a long time ago, the Jerome Levy Foundation, which I'm a trustee, and that's how I have this role. But with consultations with my brother and sister, we've tried to figure out what can we do that each of our parents really would have found valuable. And knowing my father, he cared about education, he cared about opportunity, he cared about employment, and something which it's just we don't hear enough about it. And it's still there, but it's more elusive these days, and that's upward mobility. This society, this country's been great because we've had upward mobility. We've had people always knew they had a chance if they had the abilities. Not everyone would start out as some people always have certain advantages, but and that's become harder in a lot of ways, especially getting through, I think, the early stages of education. I've had my third daughter's graduating from college this week, actually. I have one just got getting her MBA, and I've watched how they've gone about the process of applying. And first of all, when I took an SAT test to go to college, you go take the SAT test, that's it. No, no, you have to get a community like up in Upper Westchester, many places. No, you're crazy if you don't get a tutor because they can up your score a few hundred points, and they can do this. And while that may not be fair, what parent is going to say, well, some people don't want, I'm not going to, deny my parents that chance. But that's something which is, in a lot of your families, you didn't have that context, and maybe it wasn't, people didn't have the time anyway. I've also seen, I think one of the reasons why the internship is important to us here is we've seen, I think one of the most destructive, discriminatory things that's ever happened to beginnings of careers for young people is the idea of the unpaid internship. Unpaid, great, if you can afford to work all summer and commute without getting paid. And so we're trying, this is really a big table leveler. We knew that I knew my father would want to, help you and really all of City College as much as possible, break some of those barriers. Again, this is not giving anyone, trying to give an advantage, it's trying to take away some disadvantages. And a lot of you are, I have no doubt most of you would be very successful in what you did anyway. We just want to help you get a good start, and in doing so, hopefully create a reputation for that, not only for the fellowship program, but also for City College students generally. Now, as far as the program, I should step back a bit. Now, I've been running a small organization that's going through many forms over the years. My family that started what's was then called the Jerome Levy Institute at Bard College, which I think is where Professor Foster had come from. We actually had a break with the college. It was just different interests, and my father and I went back to the private sector. No fights or anything, nothing like that. But it was just the directions were, it made sense at that point. So I'm not involved in that, but I have continued to hire people, and this was I think the group that President Boudreau was talking about in my office now. And over the years, we don't do it so much anymore, but over the years there were times when we'd hire 1 or 2 college graduates every time. And so how did we do? Well, we knew that the academic skills were really a good barometer for us of performance. Not everything, but because first of all, we wanted people who were bright. And second of all, if somebody puts together a very good academic record, tells you not only are they bright, but they'll do a good job on things even if they don't find them so interesting. They believe in consistently doing good work, which is also important to us. So how do we go about? Well, let's see. We want to pick people who have strong academic backgrounds. So what do? We go to Barron's or one of the other lists of somebody who ranks colleges and the most competitive, highly competitive, and we'd say, let's take 200, 300, 150, 200 of these schools, write them letters to the career counseling office and the head of the economics department and see what happened. And now I would get some applications from sometimes from some schools that weren't on that list. And I remember one fellow who I went to one of the SUNY schools, and immediately I was trying to figure out how do I compare that. My experience, I went to a small New England liberal arts school. My wife did. My first 2 daughters did. My younger one went down south for a little change of pace. But I knew how to interpret certain, their types of, or our types of student performance. It was hard, but what would happen in some of these cases, in fact, in the one particular, actually, one of the 2 people I hired from SUNY, one of them has been with me 10 years, is now a partner. Another one, it was amazing, so I could talk about him all night, but he happened to, after his application came and we were intrigued, he had I think almost a perfect average, and a lot of things. We got some letters. We got a letter from one of his professors that said, listen, I taught for 15 years at Harvard, and this guy was one of the best students I've ever had. So things, but it was hard. I don't know if I would have made that decision at that time, based on what I knew. We're just trying to take out the unknowns because it's very expensive to make a mistake. So when I first approached the administration here and said, okay, we want to do something to help the students here. I wasn't really sure what I was actually dealing with. And I got a very good lesson very quickly, my first visit. First of all, one thing I realized, and this shows you how naive I was about this about this school, despite the fact my father talked about it all the time, he never actually took us to the campus, even though we were in the city a million times. Again, he's absent-minded about certain things, but I knew he loved his school. He also went to Townsend Harris High School here, which he went to reunions of forever. And it's one of those moments I got to get myself off this subject. Anyway, so I came to this meeting, and one of the things I learned is, first of all, hey, these students are not people who, like a lot of my kids' friends, say, well, I'm going to college because almost everybody in our community does, and I'm not really into the academics, but I want to graduate, and I want to go to party school, or I want to do this. You guys work hard to get your education. I mean, having to commute, nobody's going to apply to City College with the idea they're going to drink beer and party. I mean, I have a feeling there are probably better parties elsewhere. Maybe I'm wrong, but everybody here is really serious. You've got motivation, and then I realize this: you have already selected. You've already gone through a selection process. You're already screened by those who are willing to come and take while dealing with family responsibilities and working at the side or whatever it is. And while I knew there were students who were on had jobs and were on financial aid and other things at schools like where I went to school. It's a little different. We're talking about a whole student body where this is more the norm than not. And the other thing I learned was the president told me that top 20% of students here would do well at any school in the country. And I started to think of it and realized that, for a lot of you, City College is the way you can get your college education going, or maybe a few other options, but and there's no reason why, somebody who might be brilliant in the next, I don't know who to say, Bill Gates, whoever it is, who is, just a diamond in the rough. And maybe because employers like me didn't know how to evaluate, well, if someone got a 3.8 at City College or a 3.8 at Williams College, I knew at the Williams College, I was impressed, I was there, I knew how hard that was. I wasn't sure what the competition was like. So I've been learning. And so the idea came, thinking about how we could solve the problem with employers like me. So why don't we, take some of the top students, let's make sure that they have no disadvantages, that they know we give proper advice on providing a resume, on interview technique, on the business culture, and take away this disadvantage of the unpaid internship. And we can start to build a reputation where, because there are a whole lot of reasons that employers would be, would be very attracted to this group. That this diversity, you're local, it's serving the community, it's a whole lot of things that a lot of them, maybe some of it's only because it's good business or you're supposed to, but I think a lot of them because they like the idea of being involved in those ways. Can really we can start something here, and not only can we build a sense of this sort of elite brand of student right here in New York, but also in the process make people look at all City College students in a whole different way than they have before. So that's something that really, I knew immediately my father would love this. First of all, thank God it's gotten a little better now. But the last, few years for people coming out of college, starting their careers, am I supposed to shut up now? Is that what? No, okay. I look better in the dark, it's all right. Anyway. Anyway, so that's was the origin of this. We really are excited about the idea that we're doing something to maybe restore some upward mobility for people who absolutely deserve it. And I mean, for the second year, from what I heard, the first year's internships were very successful. Not sure that there wasn't somebody who wasn't pleased in some way, but by and large, really good experience. It sort of is confirming in my mind that, yeah, we really have a great connection we could make. So my hope is not only that this is, by going out and being successful in whatever you want to do, is you're fulfilling my father's hopes and dreams. I guess we could put it that way. And I certainly am enjoying watching this process happen. I suppose I was trying to think, do I have any advice I can offer you? I just two things that I would say. One is, some of this stuff I know, how do you dress for an interview, and some of this is basic, and it's nothing. You check, got that off. But just make sure generally, if you're going looking for a job or an interview, or you're going to have contact with people who might be maybe part of a network for you, try to understand as much as possible what their situations are, so that you don't jar their do something that's outside of their experience, that they don't know how to. They might misinterpret something you do, or little things like, for example, thank you notes for interviews. A lot of people, we've interviewed people, and we've gotten people who written, that they were the most beautiful thank you notes. I thought I put it up on my wall and pretended that was really true about our organization for a while, and then I said, all right, we better get back to business, took it down. But they are really, all these things, just make sure, think of it, it maybe seem like playing a game or a little, just don't do anything to disadvantage yourself. The other thing is, don't place too much importance on these either, but try to keep it all in perspective. The other thing, which is much more important, is, and to some extent we maybe were at fault by asking you to apply with a very specific plan of what you want to do. I think it's great to have a plan of what you want to do, but it's also good to keep in mind that many people will find their careers take all sorts of turns and changes that they could never predict, and I'm talking about people who are really happy with where they ended up. So, the key thing if you're taking a position or going back to school or doing anything of the sort, to think about what kind of options will doing this give me? Or if I go and work in this place, will I be cubbyholed into this field, or can I jump somewhere else? I'll give you an example of that. My eldest daughter, who was an English and French major, graduated in 2009. That was not a very good year. That was right smack. Well, actually, the recession just ended. We had, about 10% unemployment. Huge financial loss. It was a bad scene. But she got up and she got a start in. She was interested in marketing. She learned. She was in a firm that was mostly doing advertising. It was kind of a crummy job, but it got her a step up. She got a somewhat better job. It took her 10 months to get a job, and that was even going out and having lunch with everybody I knew and saying, my dad thought you'd be a great person to give career advice. Just to get so you don't want to ever pressure people to think, hey, I'm looking for a job, can you help? But everybody likes to give advice. So, and she got to the point where she realized she was trapped in this sort of advertising PR. She didn't want to be there. She wanted to be at the companies actually helping create the idea of what are our products going to be and who are they for, and the big broad marketing picture. But then she realized, okay, the only way I can make that jump, I really need an MBA to do most of those jobs. So how do I get the MBA? All right, well, to get the MBA, I've got to build up a record in what I'm doing now, which is advertising. And she took a better job in advertising, and it worked. It took her 3 years of doing that to get to where she felt she could do it. I'm not saying that's the greatest example, but it's just, she was thinking ahead and say, okay, when I get the MBA, then you can go in a lot, and MBAs are a great degree from the point of view of they're very, very broadly applicable. And she has a job. She's going to work for Adobe, which some of you may have heard of, in San Francisco, which I'm not so happy about, but we have to fly a lot now. But really, I think for each, just think about don't put too much pressure on to figure out, is this something I really want to do for the rest of my life? Think, is this something I want to do now that makes sense, it's constructive, and 3 years from now or 5 years from now, I will feel, okay, I will have options if it isn't exactly what I want to do. And it's hard to answer those questions sometimes, but just really, I think sometimes the sense that this is my one chance to get a start. If I don't get on here, or if I pick the wrong place, life is too interesting for that, and you'll have multiple talents that will, I think, give you a lot of options along the way. So I by the way, I should now confess, I just pulled the notes I used when I did this for the class before you, which was actually about a year and a half ago. And I have not paid attention to about the second half. This is, I just get excited about this, but really, I'm looking forward to meeting you and hearing a little bit about what each of you are doing. I don't know if there's an organized way we can do that, but I hope we can. And again, congratulations for everything you've accomplished, and thank you very much.